You've entered BOOKSTORM with Kristen Civiletto and me, Chris Storm. This is a podcast devoted to best-selling books that matter, books that make a difference. We're diving down deep with beloved authors about their stories. We're exposing hot-button topics and heartfelt themes, the issues that affect each of us in our own lives, as siblings, parents, partners, friends, as human beings. We're braving new ideas, fresh thoughts, hard lessons, and important truths. Those kinds of things that stay with us long after we turn the last page and close the book. Well, welcome back, BOOKSTORM Podcast listeners. We're super excited about who we have with us today because you have been writing in for a good while now. We have the amazingly talented Lisa Scottoline. There she is, if you're watching us on
Here
YouTube.
I am. Thank you for having me again. You're going to have to go on real quick trips. I'm going to give my dog water, but we can keep talking.
Go for it.
We are dog friendly.
Go for it. And show the dog.
I just gave her water, but of course she's
And show the
13
doggy's
and needs
picture
water.
too. Show the dog too.
I know. So you will get the look at
Aww.
this baby. This is little Peach. I'm so unprofessional. I tried to get it all done before, but
You're good.
This is real
You're
life.
good.
This is-
We love having Lisa back with us. It's her second time here, and we're here to talk about this book today, her new book, Loyalty. Super excited about this. I want to say congratulations to Lisa, because this book is just sitting pretty as number 4 on the New York Times bestseller hardcover.
Excellent.
Way to go. Well deserved. We loved it.
So grateful. Thank you. I'm a Count Your Blessings person. This is like 35 books in 35 years. And every day I wake up and I can't believe how lucky I am in this job, in this house, and these little dogs. I got no man, but what are you going to do?
Hey, that's not always a bad thing. Okay, now let me tell our listeners a little bit about your bio, because a lot have been writing in, asking to see you on here. Maybe they didn't see you the first time. And BOOKSTORM Podcast listeners, let me say thank you to you, because BOOKSTORM is now in 55 countries, all 50 states, and 900 cities throughout the country. And we're so excited because we're bringing you really great fiction. So we got Lisa Scottoline.
Ladies, I knew you when. I knew you when you were little.
Thank you so much. Thanks to authors like you, that's how we're so popular. Super grateful for great fiction. So in case you didn't already know, Lisa Scottoline is a #1 New York Times bestselling author. She's an Edgar Award-winning author of 35 novels. She also writes a weekly column with her daughter, Francesca Saratella, titled Chick Wit, which is a witty and fun take on life from a woman's perspective. Now, Chick Wit ran in the Philadelphia Inquirer for 15 years. Readers and listeners, you can still find it. It's available online. A little bit more about Lisa. There's so many accolades and awards, but I'm going to consolidate so we can talk about Loyalty. She has served as president of Mystery Writers of America. She's taught a course that she developed called Justice and Fiction at UPenn Law School, which is her alma mater. She has over 30 million copies of her books in print in 35 countries. She has been on best-selling lists like these: New York Times, USA Today, Wall Street Journal, Publishers Weekly, Washington Post, LA Times. Wow. She lives in Philadelphia with some very disobedient pets. We've got, let me see if I got it right, 3 King Charles Spaniard,
Yes.
1 Corgi, 2 cats.
No, my corgi passed away.
Oh,
2
I'm
cats.
so sorry.
My cat turned 16.
Oh, well,
And a pony.
That's a good long life. Some chickens and some horses.
And
Wow.
I just got a pony for myself. Every girl wants a pony. I got one.
Well, this is just so wonderful. We love everything about you, Lisa. You're vivacious, you're energetic, you're a fabulous writer, and we're so excited to dive down into this book.
Thank you so much. I love talking with you guys. You guys are always so thoughtful and you're fun. So I really appreciate it.
Well, I especially loved Loyalty because I do have, not only my Italian, but I am also part Sicilian.
Ah,
And now my father used to always say, "You're 3/4 Italian and 1/4 Sicilian." And that
right,
distinction was very important to him. And
right.
now I understand why. That was one of the amazing things about this story is this historical viewpoint I just didn't understand. So,
That's right. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, 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 go right ahead.
No, I was going to say, I have a Southern Italian background, and I'm very proud of being Italian American. I'm proud of the American because I have a lot of, I have, aunts and uncles who were born in Italy. And my mother didn't go to college. I come from very humble beginnings, but only in America, thanks to public education and public libraries, can you one generation later, talk to ladies like you and have written 35 books. That's pretty great. But the Italian part is interesting because I really didn't understand till I went to Sicily that it isn't really Italy. There's a different history. There's a different ethos. Everything about it is Sicilian. And I really love that. And I wanted to take readers there because not everybody gets to go.
And you did. You took us right there. And you
I
could
hope so.
tell, Lisa, the reader knew that you hadn't just researched Sicily, you had been there. It was very obvious. And we're going to dig down into that in a minute.
Well, as you know, we love to give a little bit of the background of the story. And of course,
Okay.
we won't give away any spoilers, but I would
go
love it
for
if at the end, if you wanted to add anything, by all means. But your story truly did transport us to Sicily. It's rugged, it is beautiful. We have lemon groves, we have delicious cuisine, but we also have a turbulent history of colonization and corruption. And this story is told through the perspective of several characters whose lives collide in incredibly interesting ways. But their stories are the ones of the birth of modern day Sicily. And their stories are ones of power, of justice, of class warfare, and of love. And very briefly, I just wanted to touch on some of the perspectives we hear. We hear from Franco Fioravanti. He is a handsome lemon grower. He's working on the estate of a wealthy baron. And someday he would like to own his own lemon grove. But these are very strict class strictures that he is kind of held back by. He's asked to do something for the baron that involves the kidnapping of a small boy. And this really changes the trajectory of his life and really of history in this area. We also hear from Gaetano Catalano. He is an idealistic young lawyer. He is devoted to justice. And in fact, he belongs to a secret society that's a real life society, the Beati Paoli, a real life society that investigated crime in Palermo, where there was corruption and graft and unusual things like this kidnapping. He sets out to find this boy and exact justice in a legal way, but his mission takes him to places that he never even imagined he would be in.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, we also hear from Melfada Pincari, a new mother, rejoicing at the birth of her daughter until disaster strikes. And finally, Alfredo D'Antonio, a reclusive goatherd under the constant threat of being discovered that he is a Jew living in Sicily. Now, these lives, richly drawn, come together in ways that, again, bring to life this history. Would you like to add anything at all, Lisa?
Oh my God. Oh my God. I think you should really have written this book because you should. No, listen, you said all the nice stuff. I'll tell you the behind the scenes, which is that I went to Sicily with no outline. I just knew that I kind of wanted to look at the birth of the mafia and also look at this larger issue of what causes crime. And as an Italian, you also want to go like, is there something about being an Italian that makes you more? Why was the mob born in Sicily? And I knew it couldn't be just because it's in somebody's DNA. You start to understand the economic conditions that cause it. The suppression of equal rights for people. Franco couldn't move up. So basically, when I got there, I thought of Franco, and then I had this wonderful character. I thought of Gaetano, who would be this crusading lawyer from this real life organization. And then I just was like, when I started to travel more, I'm a single mom. And when I got to like a fishing village, I said, well, you need to take people to the fishing village because that's so much about our Sicily. We'll have a single mom. And then I also learned about this history, which is so sad and awful. And the headline being the Spanish Inquisition I know we're talking about that, but honestly has modern day implications because it expelled Jews from the island of Sicily, and there's still very few Jews there today. So well, you want to highlight that because what interests me is, as you said, it was so nice to say, the book's about family and justice, and you want to see the effect of injustice on families. And sometimes that happens legally, and that's what happened in Sicily. Weirdly, expelling the Jews from Sicily and Muslims as well, they accomplished what the Nazis couldn't accomplish later. And that's horrifying and wrong. So I said, well, imagine you're him. Imagine you're the last Jew in Sicily. You are probably the only Jew in Sicily. And I made a character named Alfredo. And let's think, oh, since you said I have 3 dogs, he has 3 goats. I realized that he lives in a cave. I'm kind of living in a cave. I mean, it feels that way. It's a really nice cave, but it's still alone. And so you're always kind of digging something of you to make these characters emotionally true and real for you and then for the reader. So that's what I would add to your wonderful summary, and thank you for it.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a great summary. It's such a teaser for the reader. So if you haven't picked it up yet, just listening to the description and Lisa's added description, you're going to want to read this book. And I am infatuated and super fascinated with the Beati Paoli. So my first question, well, first of all, I got to say, I love this book. It very well may be my favorite of all of them, just because of all the rich history and everything that I learned in it. So yes, you did. I like to say you gave us a big, delicious Italian sauce pot filled with sights and smells and feelings and emotions and life. And we were dumped into the middle of Sicily, 1810. And it was some good, but it was some evil. And I thought, let's talk about this Beati Paoli. It was one theory for the beginning roots of the mafia. Some debunk it. However, it's quite interesting. It was also known as the Blessed Society of St. Paul. And for our listeners, these were aristocrats who worked for the common good in the name of St. Paul. They were revered. Some were paid. They were lawyers, surgeons, professors, businessmen. They fought for the common man who didn't have a voice or power. But your story showed us how easily good men can become corrupt, abused, manipulated. And I just had to know, as the writer, and also through your extensive research being in Sicily, how do you believe the Beati Paoli in your story succeeded? How did they fail? And let me add something interesting. If they could speak to us today, what advice might they give us?
Oh, that's such an interesting question. Well, let me think. I think that I loved the notion of the Beati Paoli because for me, partly it's about faith, but that's a personal matter. Partly it's about doing the common good almost regardless of faith. Gaetano is very driven by faith. You know, all those credos that we hear that are in the common parlance, like fight the good fight, you finish the race, you do good. Doing the common good was from St. Paul. And so that organization really drew its strength from that. It's so interesting to me that, you know, the corrupt law was so corrupt, it only favored the wealthy nobles. You can't even imagine nowadays that kind of inequality where like we go, someday I'll own a house. You couldn't buy a house. You couldn't buy any land. Only certain nobles could buy land. Imagine that kind of inequality. And what I love is sort of feeds back on what I was saying, what's so great about this country. Our great experiment is we offer equality. If you can save the money, you can buy a house. And that can be a credible goal for you to do better. And as you pointed out in the beginning, rise above whatever class you were born into. But in Sicily, they could not. So I think I still have in mind a lot of those credos, because I think all of us, you know, all of us can do good in our lives. And be careful of others and take care of others and be kind to each other. And that was the credo of the Beati Paoli. And I think they do succeed in the book. I mean, Gaetano, he sacrifices almost his whole life because he feels for this little boy who was kidnapped that he doesn't even know. And at one point his wife says, what about our family? But then something changes in his family to make him realize, and his wife realize, how important that is to care for others. And so that unselfishness, and the generosity of spirit, I think that's in all of us. And I really love that. So it was nice to shine a light on it as a counterpoint to this dark criminality that's going to arise at this time. And then all these four characters are going to come together. And it's a big, I like to think there's a lot of action in this book. I mean, I write action. They're chasing across Sicily. They're blowing up houses. You know, there's murder, and it has serious implications. I never take that lightly, never take violence lightly. But you see the implications of the bad acts, as you point out, and the good that men do and women, and just see them fight each other until one is the victor. I think the ending is very uplifting. I like to think all of my books make you feel better at the end, that people go through hardship just like us, and we come out. I mean, we've all come through COVID. I had people who are so sick that I know, many of us lost people, but we do it on the Zoom, and you have more people who will follow you, and we find a way to be together and share our hearts. And that's wonderful.
And so you showed us something. So what would the Beati Paoli say? Would they say, keep doing good in spite of evil?
I think they would say, I think they would say, don't give up. I think they would say the thing I say to myself, which is fight the good fight. Fight the good fight. Do for the common good. I think, and another one I tell myself is also directly from St. Paul, is do every act with love. That's really a challenge. Look, I'm a mom. I have a daughter. I love her. She's a novelist now. We're best friends. But you know, everybody gets in fights with their kids sometimes. And I'll go, not just some acts with love, every act. Do every act with love. Was that loving? What did you know, was your tone a little off? Like mom sometimes, you know, whatever the thing is in your life, if you do every act with love, you will be doing the common good. And that stays with me, regardless of your religion.
Great advice. Really good advice and wisdom.
I didn't invent it. St. Paul did.
Yeah, you're right, though. It's great wisdom.
Right.
I wanted to go back to some of this turbulent history that we were alluding to, because your story does take place in a pivotal time in Sicily's history. It chronicles the shift from feudalism, where noblemen owned and farmed most of the land, to more of a capitalist system, but one over which the crime families had kind of a stranglehold.
Right. Exactly.
And it seems to me as though the roots of the mafia, and I did not know this, stem from some of these feelings of oppression and resentment, especially towards these wealthy landowners and colonizers. In fact, and I love this quote from one of your characters. He was a leader who inspired his men by saying that bold, daring, and strong men, the embodiment of mafioso, don't follow the corrupt laws of the colonizers or nobility. Now, here's what I wanted to ask you. Do you think there's an element, though, of this new system they were bringing in that did also oppress or mete out injustice? And I was wondering if you thought that whether there's any system, feudalism, capitalism, colonization, that resists oppression and the abuse of power.
That's such a good point, because I think and I'm very interested in modern day mob. I mean, I actually visited a prison there. They threw me off the grounds. It was a riot. But I think the narrative that they would like, the narrative that the mob would like, to the extent they have a view, and they do, they spoke about it. As you point out, they said they were kind of the Beati Paoli, is nobility oppressed the common people and we rose up and tried to help them. And that's just not true. They oppressed them too. That's in a way why religion was so strong there. When you go to Sicily now, you see it's an extremely religious place, more even than in Rome. You know, there's a lot of folkloric beliefs, and there's statues, and there's ex votos, which I talk about in the book. And I realized that common faith is what got those oppressed peasants through it. Now, as for the last part of your question, I think about that a lot. What system is best? I kind of like ours. I mean, because it has to be that there has to be equality of opportunity. And then capitalism works because you hope that everybody gets to play, that you get to work hard and keep the fruits of your labor and benefit your family. And the sky is the limit. I still believe that about this country. And I hope that it's true for everyone. And I hope we make it true for everyone. We are kind of a work in progress. We don't get it right all the time. But that doesn't mean it's a wrong system.
Yeah.
It means it's a great country working on itself.
Absolutely. And I really like the idea. I think about this a lot too, because I think about how we need ethical capitalism, because we had, crony capitalism for many years in the 80s. And I think that's what our young people are really rejecting and responding to. So now maybe we're moving into more of an ethical.
So true.
Absolutely.
Right. That's our struggle now. People centered, ground up rather than top down, corporate interests, right? We really want to take to it to be representative of what we want and who we are. I know there's a lot of turbulence in the country. And in Italian, we call that agita.
Yep.
But what I like about it is I do like that people are more involved and interested. I love that more people vote than ever before. I remember in college, I was going to be a poli-sci major, and the voting rate was like 22%. You couldn't get people to vote. Yeah. So even though we have this agita and this mishigas and this stress about it, I love that we're more involved. We will be better because of it.
Yeah, I agree. My Nana used to always say, "This is giving me agita."
I'm going to use that word. I like
say
that word.
My God. Oh, it's a good word. It's very
it covers a lot.
acid in your stomach.
That's so funny. I love this threw me in the book too, because you had a lot of historical truth in this book, things that we could learn from.
Right.
This notion of religious and cultural guilt weighed super heavy on me. So the people in Sicily in 1810, now listeners and readers, wait to hear this. They were condemned to the madhouse, which was formerly a convent, because of family problems, alcoholism, sunstroke, poverty, unreciprocated love, hurt pride, and over ambition. Bam, you're thrown into the madhouse. That must have taken such a toll on them, as if their fate was their own fault. And what about in your story? I thought this was cool too. A ship was lost at sea. The town tried to blame someone, not that it would be the weather or happenstance, but that someone was to blame. A baby was born different in appearance, and the town believed the mother had sinned. That superstition, I think, is so overwhelmingly evil. And you as the writer, could you expand a little, like, how did it affect the people in your story to have to carry this guilt around? And how does it still affect us today? Do we still do this to ourselves with tradition and religion? I kind of think we do.
Well, I think with respect to the first part, I wanted to look at when this little boy is kidnapped and sent to a madhouse. I went to that madhouse. Wow. I visited that place. Wow. And as you say in the book, there's fact and fiction mixed up, and I'm pretty clear in the author's note which is which. But in those days, that madhouse they were taken to was called the Royal Madhouse of Palermo. And it's just interesting to me to look at treatment or lack thereof of mental illness in that time period. So for all those ridiculous reasons, you could put in a madhouse. And in the madhouse were people with tuberculosis, people with syphilis, and people with leprosy. And you were basically chained to a wall and forgotten about. And it was really horrifying. And then somebody came along, and I don't want to give it away, but really there was something called moral therapy, and talked about how you have to treat mentally ill people with respect. You can't treat them like animals. They're still human. There's an ongoing theme in the book about what is a monster and what is a human. And that's really what I wanted to look at a little bit. And with respect to the last part, the folkloric, superstition and folklore, I think, can be alive today. I'll plead guilty. I think it happens when you grow up in a culture that maybe doesn't have as I say, my background was uneducated. So there were beliefs that were substituted for science. My mother, for example, believed in the evil eye. She was our little neighborhood witch. She thought that if somebody thought bad about you, you would get a headache. And she would have to say magic words, and she would have oil and water, the Maloiks, she called them, and she would make the sign of the cross on my forehead. I know people are thinking this woman's crazy.
Oh, we've heard it. I've heard it all.
The Malokia.
Right. So you go, or that you throw salt over your shoulder, or you knock wood. We still do those things. I do.
We do.
Right. I like to think I'm a scientific person. I'm smart. I read shit. I read stuff. So I should know better than that. But I liked that because it was really true to Sicily, and it is really true to what happens when you deny education to people. That's what happened. You couldn't educate people. And also, interestingly, for people who love books like we do, they couldn't read books because they were illiterate. So they made up their own stories. And some of the stories are folklore, and they're collected happily in Sicilian folklore, which, as you read in the book, Alfredo is kind of a folkloric character. But you can still make up a story even if you can't read. And that's what people do who can't read. And I kind of love that because it shows the human spirit, that you can't really keep it down, that your heart will still want to tell a story, and you will find a way to express it even if you can't read. And you hope that times change and you are afforded the same opportunity as others. But certainly in the time period in this book, not everybody was.
Mm-hmm. And that was really special, that ability to tell a story, family stories, tradition, what this family does, what recipes, all kinds of cool stuff that gets passed down. Yeah, I really loved it.
Every family has that. I love that. There's a lot of food in this book.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what are you doing? Because partly you're writing it, you're going, why do you keep bringing what they eat? And for me, it always makes it real. And what they ate is Sicilian as opposed to Italian. For example, there's couscous in one of the dishes because that's kind of the Arab influence and African influences. They have a whole lot of influences that are not Western European, like Italy. So, and I wanted to sort of bring all of that to life, and so you could taste it too. Mm-hmm. Like I went to the lemon groves, and I swear to God, I know this is a lame analogy, but you can smell the lemons in the air, and it smelled like lemon pledge.
Wow.
Like, you know, and I love the smell of lemon pledge. Like I will polish this bench I have just to
I love it.
It's not poetic, but I'm like, I can't believe you're in a grove of lemons. Now, maybe in warmer parts of the country or in Hawaii, I know you guys, there are people, but in Pennsylvania, we don't have a lot of lemon groves, you know.
We were there. Sight, sound, taste, smell, feeling, emotion, all of it. You did it, Lisa.
Thank you, honey.
There's one other theme, and there's so many cool things you explored in this book, but one was relating to the role of women at this time in Sicily. And I wanted to ask you about this. There's a female character who says, after you lose the women, sooner or later, you lose the men. And I was wondering what she meant by this. And I was wondering if you thought that that sentiment was true across cultures and societies.
I think there's a little truth to it. That is the mouth of, comes out of a little older woman who reminds me so much of my mother. And, but I think it's true. And we won't give anything away, but what she's sort of saying is, listen, in this, you're absolutely right. In this culture, women have no power. They're chattel. They can't own anything. And in fact, they're not even allowed outside unescorted. When I went to Sicily, even on a Sunday afternoon, there were no women on the street. All the women are inside cooking. This is last October.
Yes.
But women had many fewer choices in the 1800s. And I thought that, but what is always interesting is that in the end, there's still a pillow at night and there's still pillow talk. And women had that power, or may have had credibly that power, because there's still love and there's still family. And I always felt like, don't we feel a little bit like your family always has your best interest at heart? I know I feel that with my daughter. I know she has wonderful friends, but I'm for her. I don't care about anybody but her, you know, vis-a-vis any advice I give her. And I think you feel that way about, before marriages went south, I felt that way. I thought, oh, the advice he gives me, he cares about me, till I realized he didn't. But you know, what are you going to do? I always cared. I was there. And I think that does happen in couples that are loving. You know, your wife has your interest at heart. She's got your back. And if she doesn't like what's going on at your office, it's not going to work. In the end, it's not going to work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not going to give anything away, but I thought it was interesting in your story where two women, you took them outside of the strictures of society and they experienced a different kind of freedom. So you were really exploring that role, both within a traditional family and marriage and outside of it.
Oh, you're nice to say that. I really was trying to, because I think ultimately that's kind of every woman's issue, and probably men too, and as we get older, we try to find our own way and our own voice and do what makes us happy and makes others happy too. That's what life is about, I think, a little bit, not to get all high flown. That's what I say to myself. And so these women have to make their way in a world that gives them, look, they don't get microphones like you guys and you're going to do your own show and all that stuff. They don't have those options. So they have to use what little freedom they have. And you see the characters find a way to get free. Absolutely. Even though it doesn't always look like freedom from the outside.
Mm-hmm. All of these topics, these super important topics, are looped into a beautiful story that entertains, but also is going to touch your heart, readers. You're going to learn something about Sicily. You're going to learn something about yourself in each of these characters. But before I say goodbye to Lisa and tell you how to connect, Lisa, we have a special guest here who wants to say hi to you.
I should get mine. Mine's at my office.
Now I have to say,
Bradley Stop it.
It's Flat
Stop
Bradley.
it.
Now, I have to tell her,
Bradley.
for all of our podcasters who aren't on YouTube, we have Bradley Cooper here in the flesh. No, not in the flesh, in the cardboard, because we laugh so hard. We follow Lisa on social media, and all during football season, she had a Flat Bradley all dressed in Eagles gear. And Peach had Bradley in the trash, in the fireplace. He was at dinner tasting. Wait, he's thirsty right now. Let me get him a drink.
Oh, Bradley, Flat Brad. It's so, well, it came from the kids have Flat Stanley. And oh my God, I love, you guys are the best. And I've gotten so much email from people who love to see Flat Bradley. But I was like, listen, if I have to end up living with a cardboard cutout of a man, I'll take it, especially if he's that man. And then, by the way, he broke in half. So I'm keeping the bottom half. That's all.
Wait a minute. He wants to tell me something. What is it, Brad? You love Lisa
Tell us,
Scottoline
Bradley.
and you love her book, Loyalty?
Bradley.
Oh, your number one fan? Okay. We're happy to hear that, Brad.
People are always like, have you met him? I'm like, are you kidding? I wouldn't be standing.
I tried to get him. Believe me, I tried to get him. I tried to get that publicist to
did.
get him.
Look at those
I
eyes.
tried. I did my best, but this is the second best I could come up with. So listeners,
I wish I had that. You guys are too great. I'm ordering one of those as soon as we hang up.
I got to tell our listeners, you're just going to love this book, Loyalty. In the meantime, connect with Lisa Scottoline. You can find her on her webpage where she's got a newsletter. You can find her on Facebook where you can join the 113,000 followers. And you can find her on Twitter and Instagram. And Lisa, as always, an absolute pleasure talking to you about your beautiful writing and important voice. Keep it up. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you. And that was so sweet of you to go to that trouble and get Flat Bradley. I love him and I love you guys. Thank you so much.
So good to see you again.
I'll miss you. Arrivederci. See you.
Arrivederci. Ciao. Just love talking to Lisa Scottoline for the second time about this book, Loyalty. And Kristen, so many things hit really hard. I wanted to go back a little bit on this cultural tradition, family, and religious guilt. And I would like to say that I don't have it and I don't do it, but I think I do. How many times do we say, oh, I shouldn't have done A, B, or C. That's why this day isn't going well. Oh, I should have spoke kinder to that person. This could go into all kinds of OCD behavior. Don't get out of the bed on the left side, only the right side. No, I only go to this Starbucks. Oh, it just goes into innumerable possibilities. And why do we let ourselves fall into this illogical, nonsensical thinking that we have bad things happen because of something ridiculous like that? It's kind of crazy.
It is. And, we see it a lot in sports, sometimes in fun. But I also think that this is a product of a religious point of view. Now, I know I'm not saying it's faith, but some people think there's a distinction between faith and a relationship with their God versus a religion, which is more man's trying to make sense of God. And those religious beliefs become increasingly law-like so that we can make sure we stay on the straight and narrow. But those law-like, rules and regulations it's almost like they trap you. And so now you've got these traditions, these laws, these superstitions, and they dominate your life in some respects. So it's a very interesting concept, I think, that Lisa was exploring in her book, but also you can see the effects on all of us, no matter how religious or non-religious or in a relationship with our God you are. The vestiges are there.
Mm-hmm. I love that you put it like that. Like is it a religion, or you're turning God into something that is more punishing? And maybe some of this in ancient times had to do with control over the people, not just religion. Religion was a powerhouse way back then, especially in Italy. And it's just so interesting to me when I read that in that story. I also loved what you brought up about, and what she said about women who did not have a voice, who did not have a power, but quite likely and possibly behind closed doors, they were intelligent. They were smart. They were managing the household. They were raising the kids, and they had a voice in the spouse's ear. And even so today, whether you're a man, whether you're a woman, no matter who you're married to, when you get in your home and in that small space and you are able to talk things out with each other, this power level of who's in charge sort of dissipates and it puts everybody on the same level. Maybe that's the key to a healthy relationship. Give and take. There's no total leader here. It's a partnership between two. Give and take. What's your strength? What's my strength? What's your weakness? What's my weakness? Let's compensate for each other. Build something up together. I don't know, but that women thing from history hit me hard.
Oh, yeah, too. Especially when you think about people who feel like they lack power, they oppress others. And we've seen that throughout history. We've seen that in relationships. But I think it all comes down to exactly what you said, is that idea of that equality, but respecting the equality of the other person, because then you don't feel the need to oppress them and exert your power.
Mm-hmm. So true. So true. Well, we lasted a little long with Elisa, but it was well worth every minute. So I'll shut our conversation down a little quicker than what we usually like. But readers, thanks so much for joining us today. We know you're going to love this book by Lisa Scottoline. Shout out to Mark Carey. You know him, talented sound engineer, producer, still working behind the scenes. And guess who we have coming up on Bookstorm? I just can't believe this spring lineup. David Baldacci, Simply Lies, Susan Meissner, Only the Beautiful, Marie Benedict, Victoria Christopher Murray, The First Ladies, Chris Bojalian, paperback release of The Lioness, Alka Joshi, Perfumist of Paris, Madeline Martin, Keeper of Hidden Books. I'm not even done yet, but I got to finish them all because they're so good. Katie Quinn, Janie Chang, Phoenix Crown, Heather Gudenkoff, Overnight Guest, Ann Burt Digg, Ellie Banks, Maisie Yates, One Little Spark, Matthew Quirk, Inside Threat. I think that's it. Can't think of anybody else.
That's a long list and awesome books. I can't wait to talk about them. And listeners, just please continue to share our socials. We're so thankful for you listening. We're very humbled. We love hearing from you. So again, thank you for listening. We want you to stay on the radar with us. You can find us at bookstormpodcast.com, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. We have our fun TikToks that we do about the author books. And you can see us on YouTube, and you can see our authors actually on the screen. You can just search Bookstorm and podcast, and there we are. Until next time, one of the best ways to brave the storm is to dive down deep with life-changing fiction.